You're live.
Okay, I am showing at 7 o'clock straight up. I'm going to call this meeting to order, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If everybody could stand, that would be great. We're going to have a young individual lead us, but he will get here shortly, I guess. Let's begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, super. So Evan, our deputy clerk, is he here?
He's just making a copy.
He's making a copy. We'll wait on that for him to go from there. We can't really, go right ahead.
I hope you all take us seriously tonight as we're driving.
Oh, yeah. It's ugly sweater night here.
And Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Yeah, it's ugly sweater night. I have my Christmas tie on. You are not quite as festive. And that last row, I don't see too much festivity out there tonight, for goodness sakes. Unbelievable. So
There's some gray and some black. And a couple colors
absolutely. Evan is going. We are going to probably move things around. We have an individual that was, there we go. We just did the Pledge of Allegiance, but we'll get you on. Why don't you sit there in the back row? We'll bring you up for a presentation in a minute, Arjun. You missed your claim to fame doing the Pledge of Allegiance out there. No problem. And your mom's probably on a call or some nature.
Yeah, we went to the office by the high school.
Okay. Oh, the township. Is that around the city of Northville? I'm kidding. No problem. We are just stalling for our clerk, which is our deputy clerk. I think he's making a copy for somebody in the audience. So everything was online. If you're looking at agreements, we'll be looking at some different things in a minute. So we are made a copy for somebody that's in attendance here tonight. So we will keep the same agenda. I was going to move things around on presentation, but Arjun, you are here. So right there. We said I was going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, but we did it before. So we'll go from that. So you're good? Yeah. You just needed, if you could make sure that individual. Great, got it. Okay, from there, if you would do the roll call, we are on that. Evan, let her up.
Mayor Turnbull. Mayor Pro Tem Morosky Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Carter.
Here.
Councilmember Janetti.
Here.
Councilmember Krenz.
Here. Great. So again, I see most of you are usually here, so I'm your master of ceremony. If you came in to the right, that's the agenda for the night. We are on number 3, the approval of the agenda. We only have 3 things on the agenda: consideration of the agreements for the farmers market area, the city manager's year-end evaluation, and consideration of the employment agreement. So those are the only 3 things on the agenda. I'm looking for a motion to go forward with the agenda. Do we have that on the table?
Motion to approve.
Motion. Do we have a support of that motion? Okay, we have motion properly supported. Any other discussion? Seeing none. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Great. Arjun Sani, come right up right now. We have a little presentation on behalf of the city and the council and the governor's office. I usually, that one should come right here, and you're going to face them, because see that camera? You're being recorded. You can give that to everybody in the family tomorrow and the whole bit. So Arjun was awarded by the governor the Student of the Year for his giving of his talents. And you're going to see as I read this, that was at a presentation that I usually attend with the governor. I was out of town. I couldn't do it. So we're going to do it here today. So why don't you come over here? So we will read this, and I'll say it loud enough so they can hear it at home. This is online tonight and the whole bit. So again, this is the mayoral proclamation from the city of North on behalf of the council and all Northvillians, or Arjun Sani. Whereas it is my great privilege on behalf of the city council, everybody here behind you, and all Northvillians to honor Arjun, who has recently received from the governor the Youth Volunteer of the Year Award for 2024. That's a big deal for a Northvillian. And whereas Arjun has been recognized for his exceptional commitment to community service and leadership through his nonprofit, Empower All, his work in mobilizing over 2,500 volunteers across 30 impactful projects, and his efforts in volunteering across all the boards and inspiring leadership within North and around the state. And whereas it is the destination in life and not the journey that is important, and I truly believe Arjun's journey thus far is to be celebrated, and that's truly why we're here today. And whereas Mr. Sani, who is a student from our beloved Northville High School, and I talked to Dr. RJ Weber for quite a while about you today. Arjun began his service commitment back in the 7th grade. We were talking about that, inspired by his mother, a physician who worked tirelessly during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I appreciate that as the emergency manager in town. So I thank you for all your work. His passion for helping others was ignited by this experience, along with encouragement from his entire family, his friends, his teachers, and many others in the community. And whereas Arjun's volunteer projects benefit diverse communities in Michigan, including a health fair project that served 500 communities and a clothing drive where 17,000 pounds of garments were collected for those in need. 17,000, that's quite something. And whereas Arjun has worked closely with his sister, Ria, to create a unique opportunity for Northville middle school students to grow in leadership also. And whereas Arjun Sane's work in the community we love in our hamlet in the hills or Switzerland of Wayne County, as I always says, has earned him great respect. And we truly appreciate that he, as an ambassador of this community, representing not only himself, but his family, his school, and representing all Northvillians. And now, therefore, be it resolved that as the mayor of the city of Northville, I, Brian P. Turnbull, concurrent with the governor of the state of Michigan, do proclaim December 16th, 2024 in the city of Northville as Arjun Sani Day. I want you to send me the picture because I'm supposed to send that to the governor's office tomorrow because I wasn't there for her activities. So congratulations. And we thank your sister back there too.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This is true. Come on up and the family can come up for it right now and we'll get back. Absolutely. All those junior high. Did you do anything fun to get that on your foot?
My ankle like twisted.
Okay, I got you.
She's on our gymnastics team, so.
Absolutely. We'll get the whole family. Oh, thank you. You bet. It is our pleasure.
This guy's gotta be in there too.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Why don't you put that on there?
oh, wow, that's
Yeah.
impressive.
There you go. Okay, yeah.
Got audience.
That's great. It's not a first rodeo.
All right, smile. What side is my hair parted? Look at it. Okay, hold on. Can you tell I did this at the museum for the weekend? Mostly weddings.
7, 8 more, and we're gonna be there.
Wedding performer, let it go. I won't touch it. Okay.
Sorry, this camera's touching. There we go. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good stuff.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys.
So no.
Oh, that's
You're-
amazing. Good job.
Recorded,
buddy.
so go back, take a look at that, send it to everybody you know, all your family members and stuff. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I think for the rest of the day, you can say it is my day.
Yeah, it's
too.
your day, so you can do whatever you want. You get a get out of jail free card for the day, absolutely, so.
Mr. Turnbull.
Yes.
I just wanted to take this opportunity to let everyone know, it was you, 3 years ago, who encouraged this kid for an FAA project, and I just want you to know how much your encouragement meant to them. Us parents can only clear the path and make sure they're doing the right thing. But your encouragement, your support from the community, especially here in Northville, meant the whole world to us. So thank you so
We
much.
thank you tremendously.
Thank
Everybody
you.
on council is part of that. Thank you. So great. With that, we're going to go to number 5. This is public comment for anything that's not on the agenda. There's only 3 things on the agenda: the agreement for the farmers market area, Northville Commons area, the bicentennial area, whatever we're going to call it. We're going to put that probably as a contest, but that is the number 1 thing on the agenda. And then we'll talk about the performance review and the contract for our city manager. Those are the only 3. If there's anything other than that, this would be the time. This would be the time to come up to the podium. Is there anybody that would like to talk about anything other than that? Come right up, Jeff.
Yeah. I heard some mumbling about the consortium agreement, which I know nothing about, but.
Well, you should. Wasn't it on the township's activity? They voted for that last week.
Yeah, but
it's on the
this agreement, I've never seen this.
But it's on our agenda tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
know.
on
I'm
the
just saying,
agenda.
if you were looking for any answers to questions. I'm not the person.
No, we are not looking for answers
I
tonight.
thought I heard that. Jeff Snyder, 508 Gardner Street. Tomorrow evening, the planning commission meets to I think, review the second review, a second review for the HPs. I think they're leaning toward opening or a revisiting of the PUD agreement.
Yes.
And I already wrote a note to Donna Tingley and asked her this question. And I asked Justin the same question. It's my recollection from my 9 years on the planning commission that it required 3 weeks prior for their submission to get on the agenda. And I'm thinking we've been kind of not following that rule here lately, and especially here, because they were here 2 weeks ago tomorrow and they received feedback and they have made changes, it looks like, on the package for tomorrow. And it's on tomorrow's agenda.
DDA.
So how does that work? And
So
I'm just asking that question. I'm not.
that would be a question, and this is not a Q&A for Justin, but I think they came for information. I don't think they were officially looking for anything on the first time, but I could be wrong.
Yeah,
That's
but if you're just asking, if you go up and ask a public comment question, that's one thing. When you're on the agenda, that's a different thing. And I don't ever remember that 9 years being allowed to do it, because you're kind of short circuiting the.
We'll have our planner, Justin, get back
If
with
you
you.
just keep showing up twice a month for those meetings to get feedback, and you're not submitting, you're not paying fees, you're not paying for the services of the community that has to sit here, the officials and yourself sitting up here, then that's kind of a question, right? And I think it should be addressed, because this could open Pandora's box, because I know my next development, I'll be in every meeting. And just bleed you, I guess, until it's time to submit what we know will be approved.
Sure.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Anything else other than the 3 agenda items that are on there? Going once, going twice? Okay, I am closing off public comment on that. Evan, was there any other communications after 4 o'clock that wasn't in our package tonight? Okay, good. So we have everything that was in the package before 4 o'clock.
There's no comment.
Yep, no comments. And everything should have been in there. So we made some copies, but that was online, the agreement too. So now looking at the next section, consideration of the consent agenda. There's a lot on there, from A all the way to O, from the minutes to board of review appointments to agreements that we've done with unions and non-unions. And there's one activity too that John mentioned, just to put on the consent agenda for the consideration of resolution to establish a panel to identify a memorial for Declan, not to be on the regular agenda, but if you'd like to just.
Yeah, so I just wanted to
something on
speak briefly to that. So item K is consideration of resolution to establish a panel to identify a memorial in honor of Declan Carter. First, I do not think that we need to remove it from the consent agenda. I'm comfortable as is. But I wanted to provide just a quick clarification and express some appreciation. The first would be, so that everyone is aware, no public funds will be leveraged for this. We have had an outpouring of support, including honestly a fair number of wonderful donations, and there's a desire to use those funds to contribute to our community. And we've had a lot of wonderful ideas that have been brought forward about how we could potentially do that. So the one thing that I will also highlight is to make sure we're following an appropriate process. I will not be leading this effort. I felt like that would be a conflict. But it does have my family's full support, and will contribute, provide feedback in any way, shape, or form that we can. And then beyond that, I just wanted to say a special thank you to everyone who has contributed, to those on council and with the city that are going to help with the process. It means a lot. And so just wanted to say thank you.
Okay. And I thank Councilperson Krenz. He's taking the lead, working with the family and what we want to do. We don't know what that is long-term, something at Ford Field, something on the Riverwalk, all those things at the play area. We'll see what the family wants as a memorial. We will do everything we possibly can. So thank you, Andrew. And of course, you're on our hearts. Appreciate that. With that, is there anything on the consent agenda that you'd like to move to the regular agenda, or I will look for approval of the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Okay, great. So we have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there second support?
Second.
Okay, second. Any other discussion? Seeing none. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, we have a lot of things on there, a lot of bills we're paying in the whole bit. Let's go to number 7, public hearings. We don't have any tonight. Unfinished business, number 8. We finished all our business, so we were very efficient. New business tonight. We're going to section 9, consideration of the agreement for the farmer's market. And this was reviewed in great detail in the township last Thursday on their meeting. It was on public record. It's been on our website. We looked, maybe it was a little tougher to print it all out. So that's why we printed it out tonight. So we apologize for that. We are actually going to bring in somebody full-time for our website and other things because I want to make it as easy as possible, kind of a click and drag on there. So it's getting easier. Is that correct? Oh, great one. Yes. So from that, we will look at that. This is 4 or 5 years in the making, a lot of opportunity working with the city, the township. Today is an agreement, how we work together on the land in the front and the back and what we're going to do. It's been called the farmers market area, but it's much, much more than that. It's for festivals. It's things with the county. It's for parade, preparations. It's for a lot of activities going forward. We will probably have a naming for it. We can't really call it a park. We can call it everything else but that. And there's been names out there. We don't want to just call it farmers market because that's only, once a week that's happening. So that is why we're working with the township and working at the future on what we're doing. And I believe if you're at the planning commission tomorrow, they will set now the dates for the public hearings for that. We are maybe changing the zoning. It's actually downgrading the zoning. We can do farmers markets and everything else there, but we are going to go forward with that because we all feel comfortable with that. So tomorrow they will set the date of the public meetings on that. So that's what I understand. So from that, I would like Tony to kind of give us the Reader's Digest of what's going on, or, as long as you want. You drafted this. You've been working with the township, working with Ernie, their general counsel. Tell us what we're looking at today.
Sure. Thanks, Mayor. Yes. So this agreement just establishes kind of the basic holding company essentially for the farmers market in the commons area. And so as you referenced, the township is purchasing a piece of property in the city. The city is also in the process of purchasing a piece of property that adjoins that. This agreement will create an independent body under Act 7 that will take ownership of that combined parcel and make sure that it's wholly separate and distinct from the city or the township. So it's its own thing. It doesn't create a potential liability for the city or the township. And then it creates a general operating body. And so the operating body of the consortium, as designed in the agreement, is a 4-person body. It includes the mayor and the township supervisor, and then both of them get to appoint one additional person for a total of 4. Sometimes, or it's uncommon typically to have an even number on a board, but this board is created so that everything requires 100% unanimous approval. And so this is not a type of confrontational board where you would have a split vote. You have to have unanimous action for them to move forward. And beyond that, this will be separate as I said, and so it will have its annual budget that's adopted. That budget will be brought back for review. It's approved by the membership board and then is provided to the communities who each have an equal share in the operating costs and sharing the operating costs.
Right.
Beyond that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And speaking with the pro tem, we did note that in enumerated section 4 membership board on the top of page 4, there are 3 references to the board that accidentally state executive board rather than membership board.
And I talked to Abel this afternoon. We are fully open to do scribble edits on.
Yep.
It is not an executive board. The board is the board. So.
Oh, no, it's
Yeah,
just,
he is open.
we
for-
just needed to make it consistent.
Right.
It couldn't be called.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is
So-
with 100%. There's no executive, there's no 1 or 2 that can do something. It has to be the full board and it's no executive. You're exactly right. So you caught that.
Oh, no, I didn't. I would have liked executive board. I just meant it had to be the same name. Can't have 2 names.
Yep.
That's-
So it said it differently in 2 or 3 different spots. And I think all of you, you've had that since Friday or so, and you've had the chance to talk to Tony, and thanks for the detail. And you reached out to Mark. Mark talked to me 2 or 3 times today. We will, if there's any edits like that, he is totally open and the township board.
Yeah, and that's the type that can be done without them having to go
Right.
back for approval. And so I just asked for a motion to approve with that amendment or
Okay.
any others that are
Before we do that,
considered.
any other questions? for-
Maybe I'd like Mayor to ask the first question.
Sure.
And it just maybe will help set up the rest of the questions. Is,
Yes.
can you describe or tell us based on our prior discussion what this document is not? Like, it is not an
Sure.
operations
Yep.
agreement. It's not like, this isn't, where's every little detail? Can you explain what's not in this document and we'll come later?
Sure. The majority of day-to-day operations are not in this document and they're not intended to be. At the highest level, the township and the city are still looking at exactly what day-to-day operations might look like. There's, there's the possibility that this group, that the consortium itself could employ its own employees and run the property that way. There's a hybrid where it could consult with the communities to provide, and likewise, we could operate with a third party doing actual day-to-day operations such as the chamber. And so when we decide on the actual operations, that's when there will be a different operating agreement. This really is at the highest level, sort of like the constitution for the overall group and just provides the highest level of
So the
detail.
land management itself, even there's been a lot of discussions. We haven't finalized. Does recreation, are they involved with, having activities there? And that's an 85-15 activity. And we're all in on that, but they would then support different activities there other than the farmer's market.
And Mayor, the reason I'm asking that is if you read this and spend time with it, there's
Right.
things that are not in there. That's why I wanted to
Yep.
just get on the record that
Yep.
this is not supposed to be the be all end all.
Yep.
It is the framework
Good
that
point.
leads to an operating agreement or a constitution type of.
Right.
That is
doc
correct.
Comes later. So I just want that to be
Great.
clear and on the record. That's it. And I know there's other good
Yep.
questions, so I'll let those
Great.
be asked.
Other questions from council?
I guess mine one is, and I mentioned this a little bit in our prior discussion, but in terms of the assets that would be under control from the farmers market consortium, so they would have the land, the building. I would assume if they build up a general operating fund associated. We know in here that they're going to have general property insurance, but they have a capacity to be sued and be sued. So I guess it would give a protection if there was an incident on the property from the rest of the city. But that property would then be at risk and would be independent to that. So if the farmer's market were to be sued, that would be kind of the obligation within that land and the building, the consortium itself, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. That is why we set out the very comprehensive set of insurances so that it is built in a way to protect its assets as well from any sort of lawsuit.
And then the only other question I had within, I guess one, just kind of general note. So I know in here we've labeled, so the township supervisor will appoint 1 more member, the mayor will appoint 1 more member. Why did we leverage that approach versus going through our traditional appointments process? And having it being part of the same way we handle every other committee or commission.
So we could do that again. We have 27 boards and committees. Some are appointed right from the mayor or the township supervisor. we're pretty democratic. Barbara and I look at everybody on those 27 boards. We could look at that same thing. It could be somebody on this board. It could be, you know, you represent this body on 27 different boards. It's probably one of you. It could be the city manager. That hasn't been decided where that's going to go, but great point. There hasn't been decision who is going to be that representation. And again, it's who's ever the mayor, the supervisor, and somebody else, and that might be different, you know, a 2-year term on that board, or that'll be decided too.
It's a 2-year term.
Yep. So 2-year term on that board. Some we have 3-year terms, you know, depending on different boards in town.
Will it always be the mayor, not Brian Turnbull, and then
That is
the
correct.
Commissioner Abel?
It's always the supervisor and the mayor. It's
Okay,
not
got it.
names. There is no
Got it.
names on this thing. So a
Okay.
person can't control it, and it's got to be unanimous to make anything happen. All 4, you know, of those people on there. One from additional person on the township, additional person from the city. Just like, you know, we have different boards here. Brownfield, we appoint from the mayor's recommendation, all on Brownfield. We appoint those on DDA here with concurrence. So
And-
we'll have the same concurrence here.
And for example, so when Chamber wants to use the property for the farmer's market, they will go to that group and ask permission.
That is the governing board. Yep, correct.
Okay, all right. And same with if someone wants to start a parade there, the people in charge of the parade have to ask the.
Yes,
Okay,
to my knowledge, correct.
That's all correct.
I know you've been working with the township for months.
Well, technically on that, it becomes multi-layer because they'd have to first go to the consortium, but then there still would be an event permit related
Right.
to that.
Right.
So.
If they were doing something, if they wanted a festival down there,
Yeah.
we'd have to go through our policies and procedures, which is about 10 pages.
Not a big deal.
No.
And we have
Other
no,
questions?
we have no restrictions on that member. So that member, like, when you referenced it being someone in council or someone on the township board, but it could be literally any resident, any citizen, anyone, really,
Could be.
by the way it's drafted.
Yes.
So.
Good. Question?
Well, I was going to follow, since we're on that topic, I thought Tony was, because this is something Tony and George and I talked about at length today, because Tony, I'll go through, so we're clear-eyed on what right we're giving up. So so I will start off that I really like that the Urban Cooperation Act of 1967 and doing an interlocal agreement under that act is how this is structured.
Yep.
I think that's really good. I know it was sort of floated by others, legal, to do it otherwise, and you came up with that, and I think I really like this as the option.
Policy and
When you
procedures.
read through it, it's clean, it's pointed, other than the part about bonding and all that, which, you know, but it really is clear-eyed in terms of how are we, you know, what is our responsibilities? What can we delegate? Blah, blah, blah. So it's very good. But I'm gonna follow up from John's, the thing that one of the items we discussed at length. And I'm gonna talk in terms of 2 different topics for discussion and questions, and Tony can clarify, one is I want, as I said, what are we giving up? I think we need to be clear-eyed on the topic of membership. And the other 2 have to do with some unusual provisions in this that also give the governing body a little more authority than that I'm comfortable with, meaning well, there's 3 related items. The checks and balances I normally want to see in agreement. Now, I say these things because this is a foundational agreement. Use the term lower C constitution. So this is the basic thing. I know that the operations agreement is going to come later. That'll be more nuts and
Right.
bolts. But
Yep.
this is the foundational document. So the operation agreement
is the
cannot
land agreement.
supersede anything in here. But first, let's talk about the member board. So which is the governing board. The way the law is constructed, each governing body, which are the parties, I'm going to call them the parties. There's 2 parties to this agreement. It's the city and the township. So those are the 2 parties, and it's the governing bodies of each of those 2 parties. Does that make sense? So they shall appoint a member of the board pursuant to the agreement. Okay, so number 1, it's a little unusual, but this is the way the law is structured. It's a member. It isn't members, you know, that they can pick as many as on. It's 1 member. It is a singular. But it's their discretion of who they appoint. Okay? And this is where some of the logic come in. So when we, in this agreement, say it's the mayor or the supervisor, that is it. There is only one person filling each of those roles. So in that, and we can give up that authority, but I just wanted clear-eyed that we are, correct, Tony?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Now, there's a second part of this is now I'm not, this is nothing against the current supervisor or the current mayor. It is not.
I understand.
I trust the parties there, but this is a long-term agreement. We don't know who's going to be sitting in those seats in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years. And again, this is the foundational document. So there's a second provision that we have, by the way, so we can voluntarily give up the other one essentially by saying it's the mayor and supervisor. So we've given up that opportunity to appoint another person, right? Or define it differently. The second part is that member, the appointed member, the township appoints one, board, township trustees, and we appoint one. That member may be removed by the appointing governing body at will. Now, that is not mentioned in this agreement, but but by not mentioning it doesn't take away the authority to do it. Correct, Tony?
That is correct.
Yeah. So we could still, now Tony and I disagree a little bit on this, but I want to test it out. We can give up our authority to who we appoint, and make it prescriptive, but we do not, because of the state law, give up our authority to remove them. So functionally, we could, if something happens in some future state and there's displeasure by either of the governing bodies of the mayor or the supervisor, they could at will remove them from the consortium membership board. So that leaves them without, because there's nobody else to appoint, right? Because there's no flexibility. So we don't give up that option to remove them at will, but we would functionally be leaving a board with only two people, who, by the way, were appointed by them. So it's a kind of odd situation, but it just, as long as we're clear-eyed that that's what we're doing.
And good point on that. So talking to Abo twice this afternoon, because I thought there might be some scribble on their additions. We are open, and I was totally open, and he rolled on appointed with concurrent, that second person appointed with concurrence from our board.
Oh, that's
and
a good idea. That's a
So
good idea.
I rolled him on that. I mean, so he can't really say who he wants. Well, he can, but we're very democratic. We look at, we approve everybody on all 27 boards. So I might bring it to the table, but we will vote on that, just like we vote on. I am comfortable with that. The mayor and the supervisor, not the names, bringing that to the board. So.
And the thing that helps with that, I hadn't even
He rolled on.
thought that was an option. I think that's good. Number one is in line with, because what it is, it's very like many of we're on the board selection
Right.
committee, is the mayor appoints with consent of council.
Yep.
So
want the same.
it's pretty rare that the mayor appoints, and by the way, we're just letting you know, although there are a
Yep.
couple, right?
Yep.
Most of them are the mayor appoints with consent of council.
And even on those,
And many of them are actually.
we review them all and we bring them all to council, even though it is that way.
Even the couple that we
Yep.
don't. So I think that's a helpful thing. I think
So I think that would be very.
I think the reason it's
Logical.
helpful is we would hate a position for some future council or trustees
Yep.
that they're in this awful position that they have to take the supervisor. The other part is, and so at least it leaves us at least a reasonably safer person, right?
Absolutely.
That, again, this is future, like reduce risk, right?
Yep.
The other thing it does is the person that they want to appoint can be removed at will by them. So even though it.
And I would want that in concurrence with the boards, just like he got appointed.
Well, all I'm saying
That's
is, so
still on
that
there.
person, so you could be like, okay, that person disagrees with the mayor or that person disagrees with the supervisor.
Right.
Well, you're gone. Let me get person B in, right?
Right.
So I'm not saying that this is going to happen. I'm just saying a foundational document. It's good to have those checks and balances in it, right?
But talking to Mark, I asked him to, on taking that person off, approval concurrence by his board and us. So that's a twofold.
Well, that would help
safeguard
with
on
that
it.
check and balance.
Yeah, that's exactly
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So he didn't quite look at it that way early on, but I think that is more logical to do. So he will roll on that scribble edit on both.
I would be much more comfortable.
Good.
with that.
So
Address
on
my issue.
both those issues.
So that handles the first
Good.
disclosure on what we're giving up.
Okay.
And I am actually, I mean, I think by tradition, I would want the mayor and the supervisor on that. So
Right.
I'm not even opposed to it. It's
Right.
just the cascading effect of requiring it. Okay.
Well, in that way, you don't have, if you have the supervisor and then the supervisor appointing someone, you risk it being basically you're doubling up in terms of
Correct.
who's being allocated with that responsibility. And so I think it does provide an extra layer of protection at both the township and city.
Support and concurrence. Yep.
Yeah.
Good.
So you can be over there being creative with your technical writing.
Yep,
Okay,
working on
thank
it.
you.
Great.
Those
Working
two
on
items. Thank you.
And Alan knows all about that,
All
his
right.
people already.
So, the other,
Ernie.
these are interrelated. So I'm going to begin with the first of what's required in this agreement. This is related to an annual budget. So there's two places in this agreement where it talks about the budget. One is, of course, the responsibility of the membership board is to adopt an annual budget and to prepare the proposed annual budget. You know, so that's part of their responsibility. The other part of it is in the assessment. So the membership board is number 4. Assessments are number 5. So what flows in subject 5 is, this has to do with which I'm in complete agreement, we split the costs, right? So it's half a portion to the township, half a portion to us. Those are the two parties to the agreement.
Correct.
Remember the two parties part because that comes later. But so number 5 is assessments, and it says the parties to this agreement shall be assessed by the membership board equal shares of consortium costs, which are within the proposed cost and expenditures as established by the annual budget. So the membership board establishes the budget, and whatever that budget says, we got 50-50. So what's missing from this in a check and balance standpoint? So number 1, there is no requirement in here from a foundational document for financial reporting. So they don't have to submit a financial report. Now they submit a budget, but a budget is for a future thing. It isn't necessarily on past. Now, some of that can be addressed in the operations agreement, but only minimally. It can't require a financial report or financial reporting on that. The other is that the board approves the budget. All they have to do is send us the bill. There is no approval for the budget on our part. So it's $10,000 budget. I'm just throwing something out. You pay 5,000, you pay 5,000. That's it. There's no discussion approval. There's no check and balance on whether that is something that we seem reasonable or whatever. Now, there is a remedy, but the remedy is pretty harsh. The only recourse of either party who would object to the budget and being assessed 50% of that budget is the parties may sue one another to enforce obligations to contribute to reimbursements as required. So if either party balked and said, I don't want to pay that amount this year because I don't agree with the budget, right? Doesn't matter. The consortium can sue the party, or we could sue to say we disagree with that. So just be clear-eyed that there is not a check and balance on this whole budget thing. Now I understand it gets messy because does that mean the trustees need to approve of the budget and we need to approve it? Well, there's precedent for that, certainly with our other shared services agreement. So, but that doesn't happen.
And on that point too, remember, this is the land agreement, the operations agreement. We're looking for that shared opportunity, even looking under Parks and Rec, as they come up with budgets
No, but
and
what
activation. and-
right, but this is the foundational document.
Right.
So there is no requirement for financial reporting annually. And the budget it's submitted and it's only for our information and for assessment purposes. So, the other things in this is related to, it's under number 10. So it has to do with addition, numbers 9 and 10. Number 9 is additional members. Now, members is not related to the membership board.
Right.
Members in this context means that after this agreement becomes effective, a public agency may become a party to this agreement with and only with the approval of every member of the membership board. Now, what that means is right now there are 2 parties to this agreement. And that's the city and the township. Those are the parties. The consortium, the board, is not a party to, they are created under the agreement. But in this agreement, we make them basically a power, we give them the authority with this particular line item to add a party to the agreement. Okay? Now, in speaking to Tony, the check on this, right, is number 10. Because if a party is added to the agreement, meaning there would be a third party, that must be an amendment to this agreement. Correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
Which under 10 would
Yes.
require.
So 9 says the consortium board only under their authority if we want another person added, right?
Mhm.
Or and public entity and a third added. Number 10 said that says that this agreement may be amended, but any amendment must be approved by every member of the membership board,
100%.
as well as the governing bodies. So what happens is now we've given authority to this membership board created under this agreement, that they now have the power to disagree with the 2 parties' amendments. Now they have to all agree. But so we've actually taken a group that we've created and we've given them authority to disagree that whether we want to add a third party or not. And by the way, adding that third party must flow through that membership board. It cannot flow from us. Say we want to add a third party, either the
Checks and
city or
balances.
township. And they say, well, we don't really like them,
So it can't.
or we see it as a threat.
Mhm.
We can't do it. So we cannot amend this without this. Do you see the conundrum here? So that check and balance, it's sort of like we've.
Tony, do you see a problem?
we-
I mean, it's checks and balances on.
Yeah,
those two.
and so in talking with the couple members of the council on this, the issue is just that, well, first of all, these are policy questions that are wholly within the discretion of the board. But I have a lot of different Act 7, Urban Cooperation Act organizations that I work with that are some do fire services for multiple communities. Genesee County 911 is another one. And the requirement to go back to the communities that are the members to obtain approval, I think needs to be at a very, it should be on a very limited scope of things, because very often it can grind an organization like this to a halt, because every single thing that they do has to get approved by their board, only to go back out to the communities. One community disagrees, now we'll bring it back to the membership board, fight about it again, send it back out with the amended number. It can become an administrative nightmare for something that's kind of very basic. And so that's the one thing. I mean, checks and balances always sounds good, but the administrative hassle of it is what my concern is. And so this does have different levels of checks and balances, but going back to the communities and requiring their governing bodies to approve an agreement of the board is put to very limited circumstances in this agreement.
Can I have a follow-up question to
Yeah,
that?
sure.
So I talked about 2 items. One is the risk related to requiring only a budget and no budget approval. And there is a remedy in here. We can sue, or they can sue us if we decide we're not going to
Can I
pay.
build off that before you go
Okay.
on to your second? Because I had the same concern around annual budget and assessments. My one question though was, as another potential remedy, is if we disagreed with the budget that had been approved, could we then remove one of the members of the body and have them then put up a new budget?
Well,
I mean, that would be a more effective manner than filing a lawsuit.
so if we amend,
Interesting
if
question.
we amend that, because the only remedy right now would be to remove the chief
You
elected
basically,
official.
yeah.
So you end up with one so if we amend it,
Well, as we just previously discussed, if we're saying that this board is appointing or is providing consent, now you could actually go in and
so we'd have a
so the township
balance.
could remove and then put a new person on and then propose a new budget.
So that would be a remedy other than suing.
That's what I'm trying
potentially.
to-
So that actually is a backup remedy. So I'm comfortable with that. Okay, but
Tony, anything to add?
That
to that?
logic sound, Tony, or am I just making things up on the fly?
I don't know exactly how that would work because, I mean, the way that the membership board is created in this document is that they're appointed by the mayor and they serve at the pleasure of the mayor, essentially. In that 2-year term, they can be removed earlier. And so.
Well,
if there
except we
was
just
some-
said that it's
And
gonna
we
be
will
done
do with-
through consent with council.
The mayor will.
And even with that, there's not the ability, as proposed, there's not the ability for the council to independently remove them, but rather.
Once they've been approved, you cannot remove a member.
For 2 years.
Well,
For
the
two
change
years.
the change that the mayor had recommended was that he at any time has the ability to remove them, which would also be subject to your approval, but the initiation of the removal has to come from the mayor
With consent of.
with consent of the council. With your proposed change, that is.
we have theoretically a little more check and balance with
Yep.
the amendment,
We do.
but now we
We've
get.
checked this quite a bit.
I mean, I'm
versus the
still,
other side.
it's still a little divergent for me, but I mean, at least we have checks balance. Now, the second part of this, so that's related to the first. The second was the number, was it 9 and 10? No, it was related to wasn't it 9 and 10? That I was
Minus
talking,
additional members.
yeah, the additional members and hold on, I gotta
Amendment is
pull it.
kind of-
Yeah, so it's the additional members and amendments. So on that, there is no fallback. I mean, so that means that somebody that is not a party to this agreement, because the consortium is not a party to this agreement, they're created in the agreement. Is a distinction,
That is
the
correct.
difference, correct? Because there's only 2 parties. They have the authority to add 1 or more parties, and they have sole authority for that. Right?
That is correct, although, as you referenced, adding a party would necessarily require a redrafting of some large sections
Which
of
it
the
would-
agreement.
So number
Which would-
9 would automatically trigger 10.
Trigger 10 essentially,
Correct.
which does require approval of the parties.
Right, and it requires approval of 2 parties and a non-party. Because the board is not a party. At no point in this are they a party, with a capital P.
Correct.
So we are, just as everybody's clear-eyed, we are giving a non-party the authority of a party because they have essentially veto authority. Does that make sense?
I need you to explain that a
Okay.
little bit better.
So if you go to number 10.
Yes,
Which is only 1 sentence, but it's a very powerful sentence.
okay,
Okay, so it says here, the agreement, so go back is that there's only 2 parties.
right,
So the 2 parties are the city and the township.
correct.
So, but the agreement must be approved by every member of the membership board. Well, that's kind of redundant because every action requires unanimous consent. But and it's as well as the governing body of the parties. So the 2 parties, let's assume where we're at now,
Okay,
the 2 parties have to approve an amendment to the agreement. Okay?
unanimous.
But, well, no, the 2, so it could be split votes, but it has to be majority of
Okay.
each of the parties. So it has to, so the city council would have to have a majority vote affirming it, 1 party. The township trustees would have to have a majority vote affirming it. That's the 2nd party. However, we give the 3rd group, which is not a party to the agreement, equal veto power. So the township could approve it. The city could approve the amendment to the agreement, and the consortium board, the membership board could say no, and the agreement's not amended.
Okay,
So as Tony knows, I'm uncomfortable giving a non-party equal footing with the party. Because they don't have, you know, you fast forward this into situations in the future and we don't know, you know, I guess I always go for, how do I reduce my risk and have checks and balances? I can see a future at some point down the road where this body has more authority, more clout, right? Because they've got a lot of real property and other properties under it. And they're like, no, we don't want to amend the agreement. Or we do want to amend, you know, so it just is unusual, I think, to give a non-party
So Tony, from your
essentially veto
standpoint,
power.
you reviewed this, you helped write it, you were involved with their meetings and this tonight. I know we are more particular. We go into it 100 times more in great detail because we look at every scenario. I would like to know from your standpoint, legal activity, what is a liability? What is, you know, we are talking about just the land agreement here, and then we're going to go to the overall agreement for the usage of it. But what is your opinion as our legal counsel?
Well, I think this agreement is ready to go with the operational perspective that I referenced, which is this does give a lot of power to the board. And I think that's the proper thing to do. You don't, if everything deferred back to this board or this council and their board, then you don't need to create an Act 7 because you can essentially just each make every single decision about every single aspect of its operations independently. And you could be approving resolutions on every 2 weeks. Right, to handle their operations at that level. That's not what this does. This does create the board and gives them an ability to handle a large amount of the day-to-day. And that's how it is designed. Again, that's a policy decision, but in dealing with multiple Act 7s in different.
And that's why you set it up
levels,
that way as an Act 7.
I think this is a good mix of granting executive power to the membership board while retaining ultimate authority with the governing bodies of the communities that are members.
With those edits of support of that second person from both boards, which the township rolled on to today. I was even more.
I do think that does further temper that authority for sure.
There's a clarification on something he just answered.
Okay.
Question though.
Sure.
Just in terms of, you said this going back and it could be every 2 weeks. Number 9 and 10 are only dealing with a very high level of adding additional parties or amending the agreement and allowing a non-party to have equal footing on whether the parties can amend the agreement. It has nothing to do, I'd call it a red herring, that we're going to micromanage them or anything else. That would be if we had approval, say, of the budget each time. And I think that really could cause problems, some of it, the financial aspect of it. But in this, it is not the nuts and bolts. This is a high level.
Right.
Who is a party to this
Right.
agreement and who has the authority to approve or not approve adding parties, which is not operational.
Right.
That would not be coming back every 2 weeks.
No.
This is a higher level, number 9 and 10 deal with a higher level policy decision, versus those kind of nuts and bolts problems.
That is correct as it relates to 9 and 10, but 9 requires 10, which does require the legislative body's approval. Right.
Other questions?
I will say on number 10, I was more concerned previously.
Yep.
Since we've
Not
put
now.
the control on membership. To me, you've got the mayor, the township supervisor, and then we and the township board will have the ability to appoint. So yes, it is giving power to a non-party, but we are appointing for all effective terms. Or
Correct.
people are electing
For the
the
second
parties
person.
that are on that.
One of you,
Board.
or whoever.
So it isn't as if it's coming from a completely external body that we're giving that power to. It's something that we have influence over
Yeah, and
as part of that. So that's how I was able to
I
rationalize
think
that.
it helps. It's just unlike the other where we can sue. These two provisions, it's ironclad. It is what it is.
Right.
There is we just have to take a little bit of a leap of faith, I guess, and hope that if it turns out to be a problem that we don't have to exercise our removal authority and begin that cascade.
We are looking for the
Let's say we've
opportunity.
got
We've been
this.
looking forward to it for 4 or 5
Yeah,
years. and
no.
We want to make it happen.
So anyway, as long as we're wide-eyed on that risk going in. Okay? So-
Absolutely. Other questions from members? I will open it up then. If anybody has a comment from, before we take a vote on this tonight, this would be your time. Right up to the microphone. Full name and address. That'd be great.
Does that help? Jeff Snyder, 5 Gardner Street. Just a couple of quick questions, because I kind of like the idea of having a consortium, but this is every 2 years is for four people, right? How does that work? You're appointed for a 2-year term?
Yeah.
Right?
No,
No. So
supervisor's more than 2-year term.
the two, the mayor and the supervisor are on it, no matter regardless.
right.
Supervisor's
And
more than
then
2 years.
every 2 years,
No, I get that, but the other two are every 2 years. So theoretically, a new supervisor, we have new mayor, and we have this transaction that, the other two,
Could be.
that there are going to be times when things are going to be difficult to manage.
it's a good point.
It's just something to think about. I don't know how that works. Can you rotate the two? Start first one, each two of them, maybe a 1 year, then a 2 year, and then rotate the other two in 2 years. So you don't have just a clean slate sometimes.
Oh, the history,
Yep.
the history of, that you have on a.
And those other two could be consistent too, not just the mayor and the supervisor. Those other two appointees I know it's not a Q&A here, but we're trying to rationalize this.
So what if at any given moment during critical decision making, there's only 3 people present or available?
Yeah.
Or whatever.
It's unanimous.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Yeah. You could, because they.
Somebody would have to be appointed to be on that committee.
Somebody's
No,
hospitalized.
no, because it has to be a quorum.
But I think 3 is a quorum.
No,
Yeah,
4 is a
three
quorum.
three is a quorum,
Yeah.
and so it requires a unanimous vote of the 3, other than in those sections where there's a distinction that says every member of the board.
Okay.
Which is in 2 places within.
Yeah, let
If
me,
if somebody's ill, prolonged illness, those kind of things, I guess you'd have to vote to remove the
Right.
person.
Sure.
Person.
Oh, if somebody was like, had a serious.
Making
Yeah.
sense.
Right.
Now,
okay.
Which we do on
Okay.
our 27
That-
boards too.
It says here, this is the second or third sentence of number 4. All members must be present to constitute a quorum. And then it later says that, where is that, Tony? There's 2 places where it, hold on,
use up my time.
that it requires unanimous.
I'm gonna give you a couple seconds.
This is good conversation.
I'm
Yeah, you're still
sorry,
reading.
yeah.
We usually don't do Q&A, but this is interesting.
Yes, so the sentence is actions by the membership board, assuming a quorum, requires unanimous concurrence of the members of the membership board,
Right.
being the members present to constitute a quorum. So if you had a meeting where there were 3 people, they can act unanimously.
It says all members must be present to constitute a quorum,
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
period. So that's
That
all
does seem
4.
very-
That's all 4. That three are there.
It's okay.
It's not a,
Yeah, I apologize.
okay,
That's
'cause
correct. That's
We're
4.
taking your time.
Yeah.
Oh, so it does need to be 4.
So yes, so that
Okay.
does require,
For that
again, that
one.
was the, and sorry, this piece was negotiated quite a bit because the township did want to ensure that this was board action, by unanimous.
and I don't have a problem with that.
I don't
but
either.
you-
I'd rather have
You
the
have
4.
to have all 4 there and all 4 need to have concurrence in the
Right,
vote.
it's
So
not the majority, it's not 3 or 4, and that's the way I read it. That's my discussions with the
That's
township.
great, except
All
for
4.
when somebody is ill or somebody, there's circumstances where
Well,
decisions
I
need to
think-
be made and they can't be, and you are stifled.
Right.
Which could last a long time.
Well, we have
particularly if the
appoint,
mayor, I'm sorry,
Yeah, right.
but if the mayor or supervisor are the ones with an extended illness or absence, there is no other option.
that's a great point. The mayor or the supervisor could appoint, so we do it on all 27 boards in a short term. We could do that
I
on
can't
this.
imagine our mayor ever being absent. from
Oh,
I know.
God. He was very young when he came here, with dark hair,
Can I also?
Anyway, I'm sorry, we're diverting.
Maybe this as well. The township electoral cycle is on even years, the city's on odd years.
Yes.
So they're already.
Right.
Okay.
We have a cadence right now with those two. That's true. Good.
And you mentioned you vetted out some of the other agreements. Have you vetted out a similar, like a farmer's market agreement, or like a Royal Oak? Or?
Oh, yeah.
And how, have you seen testimony from them or heard this feedback? So there may be some input from those communities that may be helpful.
I think Nancy's here. We actually researched about a half a dozen,
Well, they didn't look
yeah,
at,
34 of them, but we looked at,
Actually present.
we looked at a lot of different activities there.
they didn't look at the
Right.
agreements.
And could the city pull out if it wanted to?
There's provision.
Yes.
There's a provision.
Yes,
Thank you.
you bet. Thank you. Anybody else here? I think Nancy,
Your
you would like
statement,
to
isn't it?
speak. I know we know your name, but just for the records, everybody hears you at home.
Nancy Darga, 516 North Center Street. Thank you so much for being vigilant on all the details of this agreement, because as Councilperson Morawski Brown pointed out, it is the base document. Now, I understand that this document is wholly for the purpose of being able to jointly own land
Right.
and make decisions about the land. I would like for my own self, as well as I'm sure the public, to know the details of the following things. Does this entity, it establishes a budget, but it doesn't necessarily operate the facility, and that's where the financial reporting comes in. Does this get defined in the operational agreement? Is this entity a nonprofit and can apply for grants? I'm not quite sure how it works. And
It's not
who
a
houses the funds? Does that also get established in the operating agreement? I worked for the county when this reminded me of something when we built the sewage treatment plant downriver. There was a group of entities that ended up owning it. And this is very similar to it, so I'm comfortable with it. But I would like a distinction of what is going to be covered in the operational agreement. And I think that'll make everybody a lot more comfortable on the checks and
I agree.
balances and the financial reporting. I think that all comes out of the operational agreement.
Yes.
In closing, the one thing I am a little muddy about is adding a member, like, let's say, if we do what Ann Arbor does and we decide to have the recreation department operated, then do they become, is there an option for them to become on the membership board? Or are they still under the jurisdiction of the current shared service agreement? The other thing is, what if the chamber becomes on the board? And the third thing is, does a private entity, let's say this membership board does hire a private organization, which some of the farmers market did do. They're operated through a third party. Do they become part of the board? I don't care if they do, they don't. I just want to know if that is so, then are they part of the majority structure when we have to do the voting?
Yeah, so they would,
Thank you very much.
Good comments. You've been involved. Thank
you
you.
want me to?
No.
I have one clarifying comment on the right of withdrawal, and Tony, keep me honest on this one. Any party may withdraw from this agreement and thereby respectively rescind or terminate this agreement by formal unanimous vote of the government body of the party, which approved withdrawal must also specify an effective date, which may not be prior to 10 years after the effective date of this agreement. So my interpretation is, yes, we can withdraw, but not for 10 years.
That is absolutely correct.
And I think the reason for that is because obviously both parties are making investments into this, and therefore nobody wants to be caught in this initial window. But once we've hit that stage, then we would be able to.
That is
Just for
correct.
transparency.
That is correct. And one of the pieces of that is if the parties do, if one party does want to step out, the other party has the first right of refusal on the property, so they can continue, they can buy the other half and keep running it.
Yeah, there are many parts of this that while they're simple, they're clear and they cover things that we need. And that, in my opinion, it's just that we've got a couple high-risk policy decisions that we need to be clear-eyed on, right? And the other is that I talked to Tony about this, there are some things that we can give this consortium authority to do that I think we probably will want to, that are enumerated within the Urban Cooperation Act, and we don't. So it's sort of like, well, if we're silent on it, to give them maybe authority and we don't have it. So, but I think that will be seen as we go to the operations agreement.
Correct.
And we look at it and say, oops, we didn't enumerate that. We probably should be clear in this agreement. And so we could go back, amend it, assuming all parties agree.
Right. We have to
But
get to
you know what I
this
mean? So,
operational
but,
thing
so,
before we get to
because
that.
there are some really good authorities that are not enumerated in this document that is probably okay to be silent on, but we may need it in the future, but we can go back and add it if we need to be specific.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And that really gets down to if at the beginning stages of the consortium, you know, they operate by virtue of one simple agreement with the chamber, for example, and that's not put out there. That's just an example, but then they probably don't need that. If it continues to grow, continues to build, they're getting grants. So it's a public body. It's not a nonprofit. It's a public body, just like this city is.
Correct.
And so they'll be eligible for grant funding. They'll be eligible for all those types of things. If they got bigger, all of a sudden they wanted to have their own employees, for example, acquire more real estate, that's when the parties may want to go back in and enumerate some of those specific authorities that are set out within the Urban Cooperation
And in
Act.
that operational agreement, we're looking, be a 501c, looking for grants, doing for different things out there, having partners, public-private partnerships. There's 2 or 3 that might want to do this with us. So we want to keep all options open, even a DNR grant and other things. So.
And just for clarification is that this membership board
Mhm.
can employ or can contract with the authorities within here. They can contract with someone else. I'm not going to call it a third party because we've got party in here as a
Yep.
legal term. But they could contract with the chamber or, as
Correct.
Nancy talked about, some other entity with the farmer's market, or even not saying it would work Parks and Rec to operate it, but they don't have to be a party to the agreement for the membership board to decide to delegate certain, operational standpoints to that group, but it would be within their authority to do it, as I understand this.
That is correct. yes.
Okay.
So Tony, before I ask for a roll call vote, is there anything else we should know?
Well, I think there might be a little bit of
Liability?
public comment. I jumped
Okay,
in.
I will.
Sorry, I didn't.
Only once on
No,
a subject, once on a subject.
This might be helpful though. Is there a mutual dissolution agreement? Where if both parties agree to dissolve? Because then you don't wait 10 years. A,
No, there's
B, you don't want to just have somebody pull out, they're gone. I assume you want a 2-year advance notification.
There is notification.
I think it is in there. Yep.
Yeah.
I know we started going back and forth. Is there anybody else on public comment? All right.
Lenore Lewandowski, 119 Randolph, and I'm not sure if I got this, understand everything, because it sounds like there's a time where 3 is a quorum and you can vote, but other times you need to have all 4. You have to have all 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
All 4 was.
So, and you have to, and everybody has to agree. So I believe BZA has like alternates. So like if somebody can't come, then there's a person there. So could we have the city and the township have appoint an alternate? So in case you need to make a decision and you don't have the time to, I don't want to say kick.
Great opportunity. I don't
Yes.
think that's been
Yeah.
put into it, but
Yeah,
Yep.
but that might be a good alternative for being able to make those decisions in a timely manner.
thank you.
Thank you.
good suggestion.
Anybody else? Sorry, we got into that discussion right when we were starting the public comment. Yes.
Sounds like from this discussion, it's all fine, but it doesn't sound like you got all the details worked out that we signed this agreement. What happens to the farmer market doesn't even happen? What is this agreement? Does this just disappear? So if something happens and it doesn't go down,
That is one of hopefully 50 things that are going on, but yeah, I know it's not Q&A, but I got you.
a minute ago, we thought we had 3 guys for a forum, now it's 4. I mean, I don't think you got everything tied up here before we vote on it tonight.
I think we do, but I appreciate that.
it isn't written, it isn't done. You know what I'm saying?
It's in number two.
It's in, and I think you have a copy, but I got you. I don't
No, I
mean.
know, but we just, who changes it just now? We think good idea.
point.
Like she just said, we get an alternate looking. And I'm not real comfortable with two people having control over everything that happens there. The rest of our, you know, I mean, how long are these terms for?
2 years.
2 years. So in 2 years, you can replace them. Okay, it's,
Thank you. Thank you, Ed.
And just for clarification, this agreement, and it would also be the township, doesn't become effective until conditions have been met.
That is correct.
And this, number one, we sign it, but that had B, so one is we have to sign the agreement, okay?
Mhm.
But B and C have to do with the two properties, exhibit A and B in here, which is the McDonald Ford and the other. Both of those sales have to be executed.
Correct.
So until those are executed, you know, this doesn't happen. And on that note, Tony, you were gonna mention exhibit A and exhibit B are not provided herein. We all know, and when that document should be posted with exhibit A and B on it. We know what they are. We've seen the maps, but it should be in here.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me. Yes, so those are going to be the legal descriptions of both of the properties that we're then going to combine. They're not on here because we'll want to use the legal description that is taken through the closing, which you had just referenced for each one of them, because that'll be the accurate one for this document. But yes, that's what those documents, what those exhibits will be.
So the mayor will be signing it without A and B attached? Or is he wait and sign it when A and B are attached? He should wait and sign it when A and B are, you shouldn't
want to
sign a
have-
document without exhibits attached.
Yeah, we'll have the
We'll have that
documents
clarification.
that'll be ready for closing.
Yep, I understand, even though we know we want the legal description of A and B. Very good. Anybody else in the public? Going once, going twice? Closing out public comment on that. I would like, even though the township did overall vote, I would like a roll call vote on this tonight, if you would.
We have a motion.
Oh, I'm just talking beforehand, so he doesn't get too excited.
So what I'd ask for is, we talked about two particular changes, and so the motion would be to approve it with the changes to paragraph 4 membership board. The first being that the appointment of the supervisor and the mayor shall be subject to approval by their governing bodies. And the second is in the final paragraph of number 4, there are 3 references to the executive board. Those should be changed to reference the membership board.
Yeah, I want to clarify, I might not have heard you properly. So I heard about the executive board, that's a scribble at it, right? But the first part is subject to approval. Are you which sentence are you amending to?
Sentence 2 says they each shall, I'm sorry, the second sentence says they each shall additionally have the authority to appoint 1 member to the membership board. And that's where I would add subject to the approval by their governing body.
On that part, okay,
Yep.
I was missing it, I was seeing it in the
Sure.
first sentence, so
And the
I'm sorry.
township will roll to that too. I know.
Yep, and then
They didn't approve
Now,
it that way,
wasn't
but
there
they
a
will.
second?
And the
Do it.
final sentence would also have that same addition, note where it notes appointed members shall serve 2 terms of 2 years, but may be removed at the discretion of the appointing member. That's where we would also add comma, subject to the approval by their governing body.
Yep,
Okay.
exactly. Good. Any other comments?
Could I just clarify?
Yep, you can.
So, city attorney, does that would have to go back for an actual amendment, or would that be something that they could do as an edit?
That one will have to go back as an actual amendment
That's
to
what I
the
thought.
township.
Okay. Just to clarify for. council.
Okay, and they are comfortable either way. I said they may have to go back and revote, but they would just scribble edits or if it's an amendment.
Now, Mayor, just real quick, it is clear in that it was 4
Yeah.
were required. I think it was just a misspeak and,
Right.
you know, who among us hasn't misspoken at some point? But no, it's clear in this document says 4. And
Yes,
then also, that's why my very first question tonight to Tony was, what isn't this document? It is not an operations
It
agreement.
is not.
So there are going to be detail elements that are not in here, nor shall they be. But as the Mayor Pro Tem said, this is a foundational document of which other documents will then build forth from. Is that fair and clear?
It is, and that's why I clarified the things that
Yes.
are fundamental, like 9 and 10. because they cannot be changed and altered in any way in the operations agreement. Yeah.
Yes, we're in total alignment, but I just want to make it, so when there was questions about things that would belong naturally in an operational agreement, that's why we don't have those.
We'll have a lot more comfort.
We
with
will.
the
There will be
Yeah,
a
once
lot
we get the
more.
operations agreement.
There will be a
great.
lot more in the operations agreement as we go forward. I
Phase
think
one of it.
We all, all right,
Then
so
phase-
I'm gonna take a shot at this one.
Okay, go
This
right
one's
ahead.
near and dear to my heart.
Yes, I know,
So-
thing you were the chair of the farmer's market.
Going all the way
Please
back
do.
to when I accidentally made eye contact with you on Main Street.
No, you did. Yeah, be careful what you wish for. You might get it. Go.
Okay, so I move to authorize the mayor to sign the Farmers Market Consortium Agreement with the following amendments. That, in the second sentence in section 4, that we change the, language to include that the, membership board appointees are subject to governing body approval. As well as also further in section 4, removal is also subject to governing body approval. And then also in section 4, where executive board member is detailed to replace that with membership board. Is that
Fair? Perfect. Good. And you have that on
Mhm.
recordings. Support. Okay, we have a motion properly supported. Any other discussion on this motion?
Say one thing,
Please
because
do.
it may seem opposite, is that, as I've expressed, I just wanted clear-eyed decision-making for risk areas in this, even though overall it accomplishes what we tried to accomplish for a long time. So when you hear my vote, you'll say, wait, you said all these things. I'm going to trust that this is going to play out. I'm going to live with the discomfort of that 9 and 10 not having that check and balance.
Okay.
But I think the changes we've made with the membership board indirectly give us a little more leverage on that. So anyway, that was my.
Duly noted. Roll call vote.
Janetti,
Yes,
Krenz,
yes?
Carter,
Yes.
Turnbull,
Yes.
Roski Brown.
Yes.
Okay, unanimously, it's approved. Thank you. Work with them, Tony, tomorrow on, of course, the scribble edits and if they have to go to an amendment on different pieces. Number 2 on the agenda, consideration of accepting the city manager year in evaluation. So I will toss it over to our personnel committee of Carter and Krenz. So no, going back 5-6 years ago, we had no performance reviews here. I wanted performance reviews. We did as a group on a yearly basis. I am very pleased that we have a performance review and contracts, and Barbara Morosky Brown and I worked very hard on this early on. So from that standpoint, we want to make sure what people are doing and what their opportunities are. So I appreciate all the work of the personnel committee, and I will toss it out to one of you two. You have two things.
Mayor, I can
Andrew,
take
it's
it.
all yours.
No, and I'll just echo what you said here. So obviously coming out of corporate life, I thought in the, let's say the prior administration of, city management and that team, that it was kind of surprising that we did not have a formal review process because we need to document status of, let's see, the team that reports up through us. I think it's just part of due diligence for us to do so. This activity, I will also tip my hat to George, was also encouraged by George as he came in as something that was missing and something that should be done. So this was at the behest of George. He was in full support. Very well on that one. I do want on one glaring mistake, and I saw it today and was pointed out to me under the review that's on there. If we can get an update in it, is I say that the pension is at 140. It was meant to be at 104.
Yes,
So
104. I really like that at 140.
So
but,
I saw that, I'm like, boy, that really looks good.
We're
It's
over
not,
100%.
it's not.
You almost
true
got
yet.
to exceptional.
I almost got to that. So, on the, I'll
Okay.
ask for the dispensation from the council
We'll get it.
here to go in and make that
Yep.
update to say 104 is where
Absolutely.
we are. And the goal is 120. So
You got
when
that.
you're looking through that review, that is not the correct number. I apologize. I flipped them and
Okay.
maybe I was a little too optimistic. So just at a very high level, you can go through it on your own.
Yep.
If you look at where we were 2 years ago to where we are today, an extraordinary level of improvement on many levels.
Absolutely.
I mean, not all progress has been linear, of course, and it never is. But in totality, we met on this and you can read the full text in there, but there are areas where the city is making, let's say, extraordinary improvements with respect to how we manage budgeting, revamp strategic goals and budgeting, The financial stewardship of the city is in excellent condition. The way we built the physical instruments to implement the downs so that we could maintain city solvency with no risk through brownfields, abatements and everything else has had no impact on us with respect to their performance at a financial level, and we will receive those public goods. And we should thank George and the team that he's brought on board for that.
Absolutely.
Also, when I was going back and looking at last year's notes, one of the big deliverables we have, and I think frankly, where George exceeded this year, was taking a team where we had a wide array of consultants and consultants who didn't report up to us or really have, they didn't belong or
Interesting.
they were pointed elsewhere in terms of loyalties. There's no indictment on them, but the hope there was that we would withdraw from these consultantships and build the core team and even build succession planning into the future. I think if you look at the staff that we've brought on board this year is by and large exceptional. So that is entirely on George and the work that he's done as well. There's a couple of things that, we need to keep working on. Everything met, expectations on this was, just introducing the ideas of building the budgets, bringing multiple bids in. If not, why are we single sourcing things? When we do have opportunities to say this is what the budget actually gets you versus what it doesn't, it's kind of a staged opportunity if we can get that versus, I know you wanted this for 900, but man, 1.3 looks good. I want to know what 900 looks like before we spend any more money that belongs to our residents. Communications we touched on earlier, I think is an opportunity that we have to advance next year. It wasn't quite there this year in terms of taking what we'll say all the disparate communication work that we do that's inconsistent and I would say oftentimes incomplete and inaccurate. That includes the build out of the website, how we communicate, press releases, financial, like where we are financially, because our goal here is to have our actions be as clear as possible. I sometimes think we're not there in terms of how we do that, where everybody can access and understand the information, good news or news in general on how the city managed and what was the outcome of the oil spill. There's a lot of opportunities there that I think as we get into next year, we'll put into the strategic goals for next year. So some very, very excellent activity that occurred, and then everything else was by and large met expectations. So that was very high level. You can go in and read the document with my one typo that I just want to put on record. So
Fully meets and exceeds on everything. Would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to reiterate. I think Councilmember Krenz did an excellent job of summarizing it. To me, in any organization, when we think about whether or not it's successful, it's the team. And if I look at the team, when I look at the directors, when I look at the leadership within, we think about contingency and long-term planning. I think we are in a far better position than we were a few years ago. Beyond that, we did have a very positive discussion on opportunities going forward. I thought that was refreshing and something we should continue to do. And I appreciate everyone's participation in that. And then my only ask actually is we're going to have some tough decisions ahead. They're going to require trade-offs. And so my ask of our city manager is to continue to challenge us as we move forward with many initiatives that we are all very passionate about, whether it be the Riverwalk, the farmers market, the water infrastructure, the roads, the Ford Field with bathrooms. Challenge us because we have to make sure we're still funding, keeping our general fund at 30%, our pension liability, continuing to make progress on all of our financial obligations. And so I appreciate the overall effort there. And I would agree from a personnel committee perspective that we have fully met or exceeded expectations.
One other thing I want to add that is extraordinary, but this will be my last comment, is in the last couple of years, and this is with the help of many private residents who are very passionate too. When I joined this council, Northville didn't pursue grants. That was not something we did. And so when people ask, how are we making these advancements? Now, ARPA was a one-time sugar high, but we got able to get in there and grab some of that. I think we have, in the last couple of years, what are we up to? Almost $13 million in grants that have come our way.
Yep.
In no small part because of George and the staffing. Obviously, there's other citizens. We know who they are, who are bulwarks that make this happen, but we have a team that reflects and supports that work. So that doesn't happen without the team that's in place now.
Absolutely. Yep, go right
Yeah,
ahead.
so I'm gonna build on what the mayor said. I mean, we were for 2 years banging our head against the wall related to performance evaluations. It just, even though it was described as something required, it hadn't happened for years and it wasn't welcome. So I thank George for, I think it builds a better process of this kind of discussion. Related to that, is you're hearing from two members of the Personnel Committee. Before, there was a Personnel Committee, it was like, well, what do they do? I didn't serve on it. What do they do? Well, that's only if we have a union contract coming up.
Right.
And I'm like,
Put them on it all.
right, and so what these two members of the Personnel Committee, as well as, and again, this requires George accepting and talk, that it's okay to talk to these two members when he's trying to make decisions or he's weighing things. He can't do it with all of council. I am completely comfortable that he leans into and works with these two members for
Yes.
that. And so that is also something
Mhm.
that didn't happen
Right.
before, right? The standouts for me, again, we're going to talk about some opportunities when we get into an emphasis in metrics a little bit, when we get to goal setting, goal adjustment setting,
Right.
I think, George, right? In January for everyone. But the standouts for me, I believe it is the grants, and it is because, and we're not going to get all of them. In fact, as time will go by, we're going to probably have a little less of an acceptance rate, in grants,
I agree.
but there's still a great opportunity. And the fact that we have this capacity built in. Now, I mean, OHM is still way overpriced, but we still have this capacity built in, right? To write grants. I mean, it's Wendy and others that participate in this. And I really think that is a game changer for us to not do it for everyone, but look at opportunities and take the risk when it seems like it's a good calculated risk to make the investment in the grant writing. And the other is I really see a real shift in within for all of the employees here in terms of their being comfortable to collaborate and not operate in a stovepipe and worry that if they're talking to each other, that could have consequences. You really have set up a real collaborative environment that I think fosters that, which really, I think makes people feel better for their job. And I think it ends up with a better service delivery model in the end for everybody. So anyway, that's it.
Hey, they covered it. Good job, George.
And just from my standpoint, to wrap it up, everything's been said. Appreciate all you do each and every day. You were brought in for the future. You were brought in as part of our evaluation. What's good, what's bad, what can we work on? We have worked collaboratively together on the future. I am so pleased each and every day what you've brought exceedingly on each and every one of those activities out there. And yes, there's opportunities we still have to be working on, but communication, we'll get there. But you inherited a lot of things that you have already changed, and we inherited different things. You're part of the team here. We are working together, and I'm just so pleased. You know that because, as I always say, each one of these things will be the biggest things we've ever done. You got about 5 or 6 of the biggest things we've ever done in the city of Northville. We appreciate you balancing not only the intentions, what we want to get done, but the budgets to what Councilperson Carter said. We have to keep that same amount in the coffers. If we didn't get those grants, we couldn't do those different things. And we have to continue to get grants, maybe not to that scale, but pretty close in the next year or two. So thank you for managing that. At one time, we never had a grant here. You have people on your staff which are professional. And I think the last thing that was mentioned, we are building for the future. We have somebody for each and every one of those jobs. You are building your team of professionals and training people under. So if a day goes by, somebody's not here, the backup that you built is just tremendous. So I thank you so much on that.
Well, I'd just say thank you to the council for the feedback and the evaluation process, to the personnel committee for the time they took. Had a chance to meet both with personnel and council, got some great feedback, had some really positive discussion, and appreciate the opportunity to serve. Thank you.
Great.
And we'll say some of that will roll into the 2025 goals.
But, yep,
You'll see
absolutely.
more
And
when
we'll be
get into
doing that in January.
But what we saw where, the areas we'll need to advance will be in the 2025 goals. So I think we're set.
Anybody from the public want to make a comment on this? Going once, going twice? Okay, I'm closing off public comment. I am looking to move to accept the year-end evaluation that you had in the package for us. One of you two probably should be the ones.
Mayor, I move to accept the city manager year-end evaluation as written with the one amendment for pension status.
Please do. Note that, Evan. Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion properly supported. Any other discussion? I think we'll do this. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Great. So let's go to Section C, consideration of the city managers. Now that we've done that, we have to have an employment agreement for next year. So who would like to take the lead?
I'll
on
take that as well.
Okay.
So also, this is part and parcel of what just happened. Also, we're putting more diligence into this than we have in years past too, through the personnel committee. So I'm quite proud of how we've come along. So thank you to everybody who's supported that activity. In the consent agenda, what you're going to see is that there are two contracts that are in flight that are approved. One of them is the non-union and the other one's MAPE, which is the Michigan Association of Public Employees. So those contracts are in place, they're agreed to. And what we've done is, if you can look at the red lines on the existing contracts, it would call out specific numbers for things. So instead of doing that, we pulled out those numbers and then mapped increments or whatever to I have it written right here.
Yeah.
Help me out, the non-union benefits.
Mhm.
So the key document that governs what's in George's contract is the non-union benefit summary. So instead of going through and amending every year on something, we just tie it to what was in the negotiated contract and in the benefit summary. So what you're gonna take a look at is a reflection of what was in those two contracts are in consent agenda. Benefits are the same, wages, same discussion on that. And then the only other thing that we did was tighten some language on dismissal cause to remove some subjective actions that actually I don't think anybody was really comfortable with at the time. They're still, still robust, but we did remove a couple minor subjective actions that we all took a look at.
Great.
That's it.
And all in consideration of our evaluation. that we
Yeah,
just
I
did.
mean, my personal take is this makes it a lot more consistent by tying it to
Great.
the non-union benefit summary, as well as looking at the benefits that our directors have and linking the structure and approach to that. So I think it just drives consistency rather than trying to do one-off agreements and negotiations. And I think it ultimately protects the city as a whole while providing stability. So
Great.
better contract than we had before.
Excellent.
Thanks for working on that.
Any other comments from us? Any comments from those in the audience? I'm closing off that comment. I am looking for going forward.
I'm on a heater,
Can
so
you give us
I
that
move to approve
motion?
the city manager employment agreement.
Okay, support. So we have a motion properly supported. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I think we can do this one this way too. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. You have an employment agreement. Congratulations.
Thank you. Again, I just look forward to continuing to serve the council and the community and working with a great staff. So thank you and I appreciate the confidence.
We thank you for all you do each and every day. Truly appreciate it. Sleep is overrated and that's why you sleep down here in Northville at times too. So good. So let's go to this wrapping up. Section 10 is mayor and council communications. This is our last meeting before the holidays. Get out and enjoy Northville, down at the Mill Race Village, all the trees are out there, walk around, enjoy life. We got things going on every weekend. We had Santa in town. I played Santa at Mill Race a little bit and over at Civic Concern.
Not being any kids on Monday.
It was great. No,
Did this last year,
my Santa's wife
Helper.
was 103 years old, which was Mary Ware, but it was great. Even Debbie Dingle came to town and I just happened to be in the Santa suit. So I walked around in the Santa suit and said, it was great. Get around. We have the senior holiday luncheon on Friday. If you're around, that's over at the community center. Just get involved with different. There's so many things going on in Northville. We just got rated as the top 10 Christmas, city in the state and what have you. Enjoy it. Take a walk. I encourage you down at Mill Race. The trees are lit up. They're outstanding. They might get power on all the time sometime down there, but right now I wish you all the greatest in this holiday season. Share your time and talents with those around you. Remember, Civic Concern, we handled 287 families through COVID, of need. I had a lot of kids and a lot of families that came in Saturday. Reach out to those that, can use your time and talent. So enjoy the holiday season, peace, joy, happiness. Enjoy the family. The family is all about the happiness for the holiday. So thank you. That's all I have. Others.
The only thing I was going to highlight, you mentioned the senior services luncheon on Friday. I'm also looking forward to the Allen Terrace holiday party tomorrow evening. And honestly, just wanted to say Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everyone out there. Hope you're all able to spend some quality time with loved ones and family.
Yep, absolutely. Anybody else?
I'll just say, big thank you to Karen Kogut and Michelle Annual for continuing to serve.
Yep, absolutely.
Great resources
Yep,
in this
we
community.
went through all those. We spent a day of
What about, wait a minute,
reviews.
and Leanie Bailey and.
I didn't see that. Sorry.
Yeah, Leanie and, who's the other? Tom.
Tom Goodrich.
Yeah, thank you. I apologize.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, so we had,
Thank you to all of
And
you.
that's part of that whole review process. Everybody on board comes in front of us. We look at those and we look at those which their hands are up for these different opportunities. So that is a change, and doing a review every year for the manager is a change. We like that change too. Thank you very much. So I'm looking for a motion for adjournment. Do I have that? Oh, go right ahead.
saying happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and thank you for listening to us, and particularly me in this ridiculous sweater tonight.
Absolutely. I'm not an ugly sweater, sir, guy, so I appreciate that.
Recess is too
Thank you. So adjournment, anybody want to do that motion?
I move to adjourn.
Do we have a second? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. We are adjourned. Thank you very much for coming on this holiday gathering.
You're stuck with us.
Huh?